Hi, I believe we're starting now. Maybe we just wait a few seconds to let participants come in. But yeah, in the meantime, just wanted to say good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, everyone, and welcome, of course, depending from where you're joining from. So let's just wait a few more seconds to see if more participants are joining, and then we can kick off. All right, so maybe we start. We have quite a few participants here already. So thank you all for joining us today for the second session in the Global Matchmaking Platform webinar series, Unlocking a New Industrial Age, Partnering Towards Green and Low Emissions Industrialization. My name is Andrea Miu, and I'm delighted to welcome you today on behalf of the Global Matchmaking Platform. This webinar series that the GMP is doing aims to explore the partnerships, the coordination mechanisms, financing approaches, and practical experiences that are helping countries accelerate industrial decarbonization and build competitive low emissions industries for the future. Today's session focuses on a topic that is receiving increasing attention across the industrial decarbonization landscape, country platforms. As many of you will have noticed, country platforms are emerging as an important mechanism for coordinating industrial transition efforts. However, while the term itself may be relatively new in some contexts, especially in the industrial decarbonization space, the underlying idea behind country platforms is not. So for many years, countries, development partners, financial institutions, industry associations, businesses, and value chain actors have been working together through various forms of coordination mechanisms to align priorities, mobilize investments, develop projects, and accelerate implementation. What is changing today is the growing recognition that industrial decarbonization requires a much higher degree of coordination as well. So a much higher degree that any single stakeholder can provide alone. So governments need to work alongside industry. Financiers need visibility on credible investment opportunities. Development partners and technical experts need mechanisms through which they can align support and avoid fragmentation. And industries, of course, need clear pathways from ambition to implementation. And country platforms are increasingly being explored as one way to bring all of these different actors together. At the same time, one of the key lessons emerging from this practice is that there is no single model for success. So every country starts from a different position. Institutional structures differ, industrial actors are different, financing needs are different. And of course, the political and economic realities of the countries are different. So as a result, country platforms can take many different shapes and forms. Some focus on investment mobilizations, some focus on policy coordinations, others focus on project pipeline development, innovation ecosystems, sectoral transformations, or a combination of all of these. And today's webinar is an opportunity to hear directly from some organizations that are actively working with these approaches and helping shape the discussions around what a country platform can mean in practice for industrial decarbonization. And we are very fortunate to have an excellent group of speakers with us today. We will begin with colleagues from the European Bank for Reconstruction and Development, or EBRD. We have Seoyoung here, who will share lessons from EBRD's experience supporting country platform approaches, including energy pillars and investment platforms, and discuss practical considerations for establishing and operationalizing these. She will be followed by her colleague, Muharrem Askin, who will share insights from industrial decarbonization platforms and country-level coordination efforts with a focus on Turkey. We will then hear from OECD, where we have Cecile Seguineaud, who's conducting research on country platforms and investment mobilization. Cecile will share emerging insights into how country platforms can help direct financing towards high-impact opportunities. Next, we'll have Fiona Skinner from UNIDO, who will draw on UNIDO's experience in establishing and supporting country platforms and industrial decarbonization partnerships, including the UK-Brazil Industrial Decarbonization Hub. And finally, we'll have Felipe Sanchez from Lead It, who will share lessons from bilateral country partnerships, such as the Sweden-Indian Industry Transition Partnership, and highlight how strong engagement with industry and business stakeholders can help translate collaboration into tangible results. Following the presentations, we will move into a moderated discussion and audience Q&A session, which will be led by GMP's very own Sarwajit Pal, together with, of course, with our distinguished speakers. And yeah, so before we begin with the speakers, just a few brief housekeeping notes. All participants are muted during today's webinar. If you have a question for any of our speakers, please use the Q&A function at any time during the webinar. We have reserved dedicated time for discussion and questions after the presentations, but please don't hesitate to just submit the questions as they come to mind. We will do our best to address as many as possible. So with that, maybe let's get started. I've spoke quite a lot. Our first speaker today are colleagues from European Bank for Reconstruction and Development. We are delighted to be joined by Seoyoung, Associate in Climate Strategy and Delivery, and Muharrem Askin, Principal in Climate Strategy and Regional Delivery. Together, they will share EBRD's experience with country platform approaches and industrial decarbonization coordination mechanisms. So Seoyoung, Muharrem, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Andrea, for your introduction. Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening. I'm Seoyoung Lee, Associated Climate Strategy Delivery Department at EBRD, here to introduce EBRD's perspective on climate country platforms, together with my colleague Muharrem today, who will introduce us to the Turkey Industrial Decarbonization Investment Platform, which we call TIDIP. Next slide, please. So Andrea already briefly touched upon the concept of a country platform and why it matters for deep transformative industrial decarbonization. But to reiterate a bit, at EBRD, we see that the concept of country platform is keep evolving without necessarily having universally agreed or fixed definition. However, as a working definition, emerged by the guidance of the G20 Joint MDB Common Understanding and various literatures and outcomes, we can say that a country platform is a country-led context-specific coordination and investment mechanism that aligns national climate and development priorities with a shared analytics, policy reform, stakeholder engagement, and mobilize the finance to accelerate climate and development action at scale. So these country-led approaches ultimately brings together all elements of integrated solution, which includes enhanced national climate ambition, accelerated project and investment pipeline identification, mobilization of public and private finance, and strengthening of transparency and impact monitoring. Over all this, we see that the country platform is defined and operating alongside a strong national ownership, shaping the platform's ambition and objective. Next slide, please. Since 2018, the concept of the country platform has evolved alongside the real examples of the country platforms. On the upper half, we present the milestone papers on the conceptual development. Of course, they are not exhaustive. One is the G20 reference framework for effective country platforms in 2020. And building on that, EBRD, together with our peer MDBs, MDB Common Understanding and Way Forward on Country Platform was published in 2024 at COP, which set forth key principles such as political commitment and country ambition and country ownership, and investment needs, mobilizing finance, and transparency. And on the bottom half, as I mentioned, numerous platforms have been launched, and they are also not exhaustive, but among them, EBRD supported the government to launch first one, Egypt NOAFI, second, North Macedonia JEPT, third one, Turkey TD, which we will look into more details later on because this is the one that targets industrial decarbonization. And most recently, this year, we launched the two more country platforms together with our government, Kazakhstan, Kazakh, focusing on energy transition. And 2 days ago, actually, in Tashkent Investment Forum, Uzbekistan government launched Anora, focuses on agri-business. So next slide, please. And what we want to highlight is the country platform EBRD has supported has delivering the progresses already. To focus on the first two example, Egypt NOAFI, it has already signed more than 10 gigawatt of wind and solar PPAs, and more than half of them has already reached the financial closure. And more than $5 billion has mobilized. On the JEPT, North Macedonia, just energy transition investment, platform. So around more than 160 million euros mobilized, and also there are trainings delivered to the workforce impacted by the energy transition, and TDIP as well. Together with World Bank and IFC and ADB, we will channel the CIF's concessional loan up to 250 million through CIF Industry Decarbonization Program, and additional donor funds are keep being raised toward the aim of mobilizing at least 5 billion euro investment by 2030. Next slide, please. Last year, EBRD, building on these experiences, we did an in-house research by interviewing our colleagues who have been closely involved in launching country platforms to study the core elements of designing and implementing country platforms. These elements we present here are not, of course, again, exhaustive, but could be categorized into three different groups: origination, preparation, and implementation. Given the time constraint, I won't go into details of all these elements, but among them, I want to highlight three to four elements in origination and preparation. First one, in origination. Countries' strong buy-in and political willingness to deliver outcome against its macroeconomic and political context. For instance, in the case of TDIP, against the backdrop of CBAM, where industrial decarbonization is not only a story of climate mitigation, but also relating to industrial competitiveness and economic growth. Country platform like TDIP could naturally arise among the national discussion and the interest of development partners to support that aim. And secondly, in preparation, first two boxes under the preparation that I want to focus on is importance of anchoring the platform objective to its national policies, such as NDCs, legislations, and sectoral roadmaps, which is again backed up by the robust analysis based on real market variables, i.e. emission reductions and investment target. Moving on to the next slide. So this is the final slide that I'm going to touch upon. So based on our in-house research with a colleague, we came up with the challenges and lessons learned that we experienced launching these platforms together with other governments. First one is the first challenge is the setting clear vision and common understanding of the country platform and its scope. So the lessons that we learned is could be categorized into three. First one is to set a clear vision. We need a very strong analytical foundation backed up by real market variables that I mentioned before, on its technological pathways, on its macroeconomic considerations. Second one is identifying a credible country champion, whether it be ministry or whether it be personnel, who can actually deliver and who can also help convening all these partners together. Third one is the align flexibility to sector sector dimensions, so that these targets can be more or less flexible and adaptable. So also, given the time constraint, maybe if I may, focusing on the second challenges in balancing ambition with realism. So what we found and the success factor of EBRD supported country platforms are setting up a target and ambition with more of realism, which I mean is setting a clear, realistic timeline and near-term targets to sustain the momentum. And also in doing so, early engagement with the countries and donors are one of the key important factors that we need to focus on when helping government to establish country platform. So here, I want to pass it over to my colleague Muharrem, who will bring us to more deep dive into TD. Muharrem, over to you.
Hello, everyone. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
We can, yes.
Okay. Yeah, I would like to first thank you for the opportunity, and I'm aware that we have a very limited time to briefly explain our Turkey experience, especially in the context of Turkey Industrial Decarbonization Investment Platform, which is actually a kind of practical example of how low carbon pathways can be translated into investment and implementation. And actually, how I can start, our starting point was not the platform itself. It was a series of sectoral low carbon pathway studies covering Turkey's major energy intensive industries, namely steel, aluminum, cement, and fertilizers. And these studies actually developed through extensive engagement with both public and private sector stakeholders. And they assessed emission trajectories, identified the most effective decarbonization technologies, as well as estimated the investment requirements, and basically evaluated the policy measures needed to create an enabling environment for the investments. And I can say that one of the important lessons from this process is that low carbon pathways are much more than the analytical exercises. They're also powerful stakeholder engagement and investment planning tools. They help creating a kind of shared understanding among government institutions, industry, and financial actors regarding what needs to be done, by when, and at what cost. The studies demonstrated that the deep industrial decarbonization is technically feasible in Turkey. However, they also revealed the scale of the challenge. More than 70 billion US dollars of investment will be required to decarbonize these four sectors alone by 2053. Perhaps the most important finding was that such investments cannot be mobilized through isolated projects or fragmented initiatives. A more complicated approach would be needed to connect policy with project preparation, technology providers, and financing institutions. And basically, this lead to the creation of TIDIP platform. Can we go to the next slide, please? And low carbon pathways helped us answer the question of what needs to be done. And TIDIP was established to address the equally important question of how these investments can be actually delivered and financed. As an important milestone, in November 2024, Ministry of Industry and Technology and the Multilateral Development Bank partners signed the joint declaration establishing TIDIP. The platform is designed as a country-led coordination and delivery mechanism, and it basically brings together government institutions, industrial companies, development partners, financial and technical experts under one common framework. And the platform performs some key functions, as you can see from the slide. First, it supports coordination among stakeholders and help align industrial decarbonization efforts with national climate and industry development priorities. And second, it supports project preparation and pipeline development. One of the major barriers to industrial decarbonization is the limited availability of bankable projects, as you may expect. TIDIP helps transform investment concepts into the projects that are technically and financially ready for investment. And also, third, it facilitates access to finance by matchmaking project developers with the potential financiers. It also identifies and facilitates the implementation of policy reforms to create, and again, enabling investment environment. And we expect TIDIP to mobilize at least 5 billion US dollars of investments by 2030 and contribute to avoiding more than 20 million tons of carbon dioxide emissions annually. And to support this objective, we are actively working with the international partners to mobilize concessional resources through initiatives such as it was already mentioned in the previous slides, SIRF Industrial Decarbonization Program, Mitigation Action Facility, and the EU EPA framework. And most recently, Turkey was selected as one of the 7 countries under the SIRF Industrial Decarbonization Program to prepare an investment plan supported by up to $250 million. And I think we see this as an important recognition of both the analytical work undertaken through the LCPs and the country platform approach represented here as TIDIP. And just to conclude my 5 minutes, I think I can say that our experience suggests that the analytical work and the country platforms are complementary rather than the separate approaches. And low carbon pathways basically help define the destination. while the country platform help organize this journey, to say. And by connecting basically the analysis, policy, project preparation, and finance, and country-led platforms can play an important role in accelerating the industrial decarbonization and translating the targeted countries' climate ambition into the tangible investments on the ground. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Seoyoung and Muharrem, for sharing with us EBRD's experience with country platforms. We will have a bit more time in the discussion to hear more from you. But in the meantime, let's move on to our next speaker, who is Cecile Seguineaud from OECD. Cecile works on clean energy finance and investment mobilization, and today she will share emerging insights from OECD's research on country platforms and what it takes to mobilize investments. So, Cecile, over to you.
Thank you very much, Andrea, and good morning, good afternoon to everyone. I'm very pleased indeed to share some insight from our work on financing industry decarbonization, including for country platform. Let's go to the next slide, please. Yeah. So a few words of context first, just to explain that this year, indeed, we are working for the Climate Club to develop guidelines to help operationalizing and scaling country-led investment platform for industry, which can also support international implementation mechanism in this field. So we already had a series of workshops, and next week we will co-host a high-level dialogue with the GMP, Climate Club, and CIF during the London Climate Action Week. And this work will contribute to a deliverable for the Climate Club under the COP31 presidency of Turkey. Next slide, please. So I'd like to share some key learnings and commonalities from existing country-led investment platforms and program for industry decarbonization based indeed on stakeholder engagement we had so far and on analysis on country platform, not just on industry, but also broader country platform where we could draw some commonalities. So some of these elements have already been mentioned in previous presentations. So at the core, this platform, we see that they focus on key objectives that encompass building project pipeline, of course, alignment between stakeholder, mobilizing finance, and drive implementation. In terms of success, what we see commonly is that the success depends on a key design element, which include a strong country ownership, alignment with national priorities, a clear governance and political leadership. This has also been mentioned previously, and effective coordination between domestic, international, public, and private actors, and platform that should target indeed projects that drive transformational change and deliver co-benefits beyond the emission reduction to drive this transformation and provide the multiple benefits. And finally, sequencing is also critical. What we've heard and seen in different country platforms, that before building a project pipeline and having investment discussion, it's absolutely crucial that countries have the right foundation, meaning clear national strategies, defined sector pathways, and the policy and institutional frameworks to support this. And these elements can provide the direction indeed on the technologies, investment, and reform that are needed. And only then can credible project pipeline emerge, followed by investment planning and project preparation. So this is really key because depending on where countries start, platform may first need to focus on these prerequisites before moving to investment consideration. On the next slide, please. So let me now briefly share what financiers look for when engaging with industry country platform or in industry decarbonization project, based on multiple interviews that we had for previous work also with different stakeholders. So that could be grouped into these different categories. First, on strategy and policy, where investors need a clear country commitment and strong strategic vision for industry decarbonization, supported by a coherent and stable policy. That's really important to provide long-term certainty. Second, on operationalization, with the need to have a credible project pipeline of projects with the ability to replicate and scale this project. And equally important is local capacity also that we've heard to ensure that the implementation readiness of this project. Third, on financing, a stakeholder raised that blended finance is seen as key to mobilize private capital from this project. And also, the financier emphasized the need for risk mitigation instrument to improve project risk profile and tools that can enhance bankability, for instance, mechanism that can stabilize the revenues. And together, these elements are really critical to attract and sustain investment in industry decarbonization project, and that also can be applied, of course, in the context of the platform. Next slide, please. Just to quickly explain that in terms of financing solutions, so more specifically, there is a wide range of instruments that can be deployed for industry decarbonization projects. So just to highlight that you can find example of this instrument in our recent OECD Climate Club published report, Financial Toolkit, which is a practical tool on the type of instrument for industry decarbonization project, and so that can be also deployed within the country platform. And next slide, please. So financial instruments are, of course, necessary when it comes to the investment plan and making project finance, but not sufficient to build a project pipeline and unlock investment, because a project may be economically viable with investment plan and financing in place, but without the right infrastructure, regulation, or coordination, it may not happen. So this is why the enabling conditions also come into play are really important to unlock this investment and make project happen. Over the past year, we work across different countries, sector, and technology, and we could identify a consistent set of enabling conditions that are necessary for industry decarbonization projects. So I will quickly go through the different categories. So these include, of course, we already mentioned the clear strategic signaling with a long-term vision, target, sectoral roadmap, supportive regulatory framework, sustainable taxonomies, which are key to channel investment flow towards green activities, availability and affordability of strategic input for industrial production, so meaning energy, raw material, and feedstock. Enabling infrastructure is critical too. For instance, when we think about hydrogen or carbon capture, which are critical for industry decarbonization, low carbon electricity with grids, pipeline. Demand side measure also very important, such as public procurement or minimum content requirement, mandate to stimulate demand for low carbon industrial products. And overarching of all of these are also, of course, strong governance and coordination across ministries as well as international cooperation. So these are briefly the key categories that we've seen as critical in terms of enabling conditions. And so all these enabling conditions are also crucial for enabling a country platform to deliver on project implementation. So I stop here with this few insights, and if you want to have more information on our different work, so there is a series of reports on different sectors, different countries that we published recently, and very happy to follow up on questions. Thank you very much.
And thank you very much, Cecile, as well. It's now my pleasure to welcome Fiona Skinner from UNIDO. Fiona has extensive experience supporting industrial development and digital decarbonization initiatives, and she will share lessons from UNIDO's experience with country platforms, or hubs, as they're called, and international industrial decarbonization partnerships. Fiona, the floor is yours.
Thanks, Andrea. Good morning, good afternoon, everyone, and thank you to the GMP for the opportunity to contribute to this discussion. So I'd like to begin by briefly introducing the Brazil Industry Decarbonization Hub as a sort of practical example of how a country platform can support industrial transformation by moving from that strategy phase to implementation and then investment as well. So the Brazil ID Hub is a collaborative platform that is co-organized by Brazil and the United Kingdom in partnership with UNIDO. And it operates on three complementary pillars. So the first is around policy and institutional support, which means that it's focused on the Brazilian, supporting the Brazilian Ministry for Development, Industry, Trade and Services, or MIGIC, in the construction of policies, economic instruments, and market mechanisms that enable industrial decarbonization. So the first pillar is really focused on policy. The second is around project pipeline and finance. So focusing on building a pipeline of concrete industrial decarbonization projects with the provision of support for technical structuring, risk mitigation, and the mobilization of additional finance. And then thirdly is around industrial innovation. And so that includes an incubator to accelerate technology deployment by created to really bring the real challenges of industry closer to solutions, and really focusing on pilots and demonstration there. So together, these pillars really aim to ensure that policy, finance, and innovation are mutually reinforcing rather than operating in perhaps what we would traditionally call silos, right? Operationally, the way the hub functions is around convening key actors, so bringing together relevant ministries, development banks, industrial associations, MDBs, and other technical partners, around supporting project preparation, so building that shared pipeline of projects and then linking that to finance. It also serves as a platform to align international cooperation and to connect other initiatives such as the CIF Industry Decarbonisation Program, and connecting that with national priorities. And so really what we consider the value add of the hub to be is lying not just in coordination, but really helping to structure that interface between policy ambition and what the investment reality is. The hub was officially launched at COP28. So while we have a few years of operations behind us, we continue to learn by doing. And in 2025, the Brazil hub was supporting the development of the National Strategy for Industry Decarbonization, or the ENDE in Brazil. It also helped to develop sectoral decarbonization roadmaps for steel and cement. And in 2026, I would say that the strategic priority is shifting from policy design and institutional setup to really more on that investment mobilization and providing those demonstrable project level results as well. So I'd say on coordination, one of the clearest lessons that we have learned is that platforms really only become useful when they help people make decisions and move things forward, right? Many countries already have dialogues, they have working groups, and they have strategies. And the real gap seems to be connecting those efforts in a way that actually leads to implementation. And so in practice, what we find is that policy is discussed in one space, finance is discussed in another space, and then the technical work is discussed in another space again. And when those conversations aren't linked, it becomes difficult to move from that really strong ambition to actual tangible projects. And that's where country platforms can really help to bring that narrative together and translate into action. And when that coordination works, it creates a really clear line between national priorities and investment opportunities. And then, of course, something that was raised by Seoyoung as well is that ownership is also central to this. When coordination is closely tied to national institutions, national strategies, and priorities, it becomes more stable, more sustainable, and more relevant over time. External partners, of course, play a key role, but really that momentum needs to come from within the country. And so just to conclude as well, that there is an opportunity for other countries as well that would like to sort of develop their own tailored approach, like the Brazil hub. We are now developing an industry decarbonization hubs accelerator within UNIDO that will help to provide a similar tailored approach to countries interested in following a similar journey that is supported by governments and philanthropies with significant resources to move this work forward. So more to come on that. And yeah, looking forward to answering any questions. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Fiona. Our final speaker today is Felipe Sanchez from Lead It. Felipe works on international cooperation and industry transition partnerships, and he will share reflections from bilateral cooperation, initiatives, and the role they can play in country platforms. Felipe, over to you.
Thank you, Andrea, and good morning, good afternoon, and good evening. So I'm going to speak a little bit about the India-Sweden Industry Transition Partnership, but maybe just to introduce it and take a little bit of a step back, I can explain that the partnership was set up to accelerate industry transition in steel and cement. And the rationale behind it was twofold. One, we were trying to mitigate technology and financial risk that comes with green industrialization projects. but also that we know we have a country like Sweden, which is a global north country, has a lot of pioneering technology and expertise, and a country like India that has that ambition, the resources, the scale to be able to deploy some of these technology solutions that can help the world. And very much or along similar lines to the Brazil hub that Fiona was just explaining, in terms of the pillars that make up the India-Sweden partnership, we have institutional support, we have that focus on unlocking pilot and demonstration projects in steel and cement, innovation and R&D, and finally, and importantly, mobilizing capital. And I guess to explain some of the things that make the India-Sweden partnership unique is that it is co-led at the highest level. So I think in comparison to other country platforms out there, this has been led by the government, the heads of government of both Sweden and India, both at its launch in 2023, and most recently a month ago at a state visit into Sweden by Prime Minister Modi. And one of the focus of this partnership that we set up was that it should be very much country owned. And to give you two examples of what that means in practice, one is that unlike other country platforms that are out there that are multilateral or trying to channel multilateral assistance to a particular emerging market, the India partnership is bilateral. So it's just Sweden and India, at least for now. Another example of country priorities, so we heard from India, unlike many other countries around the world, that they already had roadmaps. So roadmaps of steel, roadmaps for cement. And so for them, it was a matter of trying to implement those roadmaps and advice on how to implement them. The other points that make it unique are that we deliver through our implementation partners. So lead it is the Secretariat, but we very much work with diplomatic missions, agencies, research institutes, trade associations, all to bring the conversations together. And lastly, it's a mixture of top down. So we have that steer from the highest level and from the ministries as well, but we also have a bottom up. So it's the companies coming together with the research institutes and the right partners. And the result of that has been the first tranche of industry decarbonization projects. So 7 feasibility studies that were announced at COP30. And I guess one of the key lessons that I would want to share with this audience today is firstly that de-risking is our guiding light. So we know that the technology solutions are there around the world. We know that the capital is there around the world. We also know what policies are needed in the policy mix. And to borrow from Fiona's point, it really is about breaking down the silos between those 3 tranches and bringing that together, but in a very context-specific way and context-specific engagements that in this case are right for India. The second point I would make here as a key lesson is that we need that strong, or country platforms need that strong business engagement, and they really need to focus on real industrial projects. And I feel that all too often, some conversations don't involve the private sector, or at the very least stay at the level of international trade associations, which is good. But I think ultimately, if you want to create real world impact, you have to engage with business around the table, with business and also with governments. And I think that's sometimes where it's a bit tricky to have that private-public conversation in some cases. I'm glad Cecile mentioned coordination, because one of the points I wanted to make was that coordination is key. And I don't think it's just within government coordination. Of course, that's absolutely vital. We know that policy portfolios are often in many countries split amongst different ministries. So you need to bring those governments together. But you also need to bring together the business, the finance actors, the government actors as well to work together. And the last point I want to share in terms of a lesson is this point about investments. And we found that in the India conversation, early clarity on what some of the investment sources were, so some of the capital that was there, acted as an incentive to bring some of the right actors along. So to involve the international finance institutions, but also the businesses and the government as well. And I think as we look forward, just very quickly, I'll just like to add that we're now focusing on finance mobilization. So aside from working with public finance, looking at multilateral development banks, we're also looking to make sure that the projects that we've already identified can be scaled, but others can come along. And we're looking at how to bring the lessons from India and Sweden to other countries in a trilateral approach. So I think I'll stop there. I'm happy to take some questions.
Thank you very much, Felipe. And thank you to all our speakers for sharing your presentations and then perspectives with us as well. We are now moving on to the Q&A and discussion segment of the webinar. So to moderate that discussion, I'm delighted to hand over to my colleague, Sarbajit Pal. So Sarbajit, over to you.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Andrea, and thanks to all the speakers. I think, it's been already kind of very, an enriching conversation. I think we'll use the next 20 minutes that we have to also have a bit of a discussion with many of our speakers who have shared their thoughts and experiences of actually driving, supporting, and taking forward many of these country platforms. So we heard first from EBRD, who kind of touched upon broad ideas and contours of country platforms before also sharing with us the examples and experience from Turkey. So maybe I'll kind of circle back to you, Seoyoung, to ask you a initial opening question. Now that you have had so much experience across these different kinds of country platforms, and the industry decarbonization platform seems to be the latest in the line of such country platforms. What do you see as like the single most important factor that makes a platform, an active coordination mechanism, makes a platform work? We have heard from other colleagues about their reflections, but even in other sectors, what have seemed to be the, binding glue to bring these country platforms to life?
Thank you, Sarbojit, for your question. And I think I will also borrow the wisdoms from other amazing speakers today, Cecile, Fiona, Felipe, and I guess maybe there could be many, and also it can be also quite contextual as well in terms of depending on which country or which macro and political environment we are talking about. But in case of the TDIP side of thing, I think the most important thing again is, as my colleague Muharrem talked about, it's about linking the national policy and national ambition anchored by strong political ownership, and linking that policy level ambition and also technical level feasibility to each project pipelines. And in the case of TDIP, I think Muharrem already covered, we could reach to the point through the sectoral low carbon pathways that we provided, because as he mentioned, the modeling and the thoughts and the analysis we did was not from top down, but more or less it has built up through the stakeholder engagement, learning about engaging with the industry association, hearing their thoughts about their constraints and the real market variables that they are facing, and then shaping the pathways, also estimating the investment needs. So again, the robust analytical work which is linked up with a stakeholder engagement itself, provides momentum to naturally convene the related stakeholders and then anchor the outcome to the NDC and also LTSs, which drives the platforms to move along. So I will stop here. If there is any comment from Muharrem, I will also welcome.
Thanks, Seoyoung. And I'll of course turn to you as well, Muharrem, because I think, Seoyoung, you touched upon quite a few of these different points. And Muharrem, in your own kind of personal reflection working in Turkey, in the Turkey example, I think you're also bringing together a large number of the partners, right? To support this work. So how important is this balance of country ownership, leadership, which I think Cecile in her presentation also mentioned that, it's very important. Fiona also touched upon it. It's very important, versus the partners coming together really to support this endeavor and this exercise. So how has that been working in the Turkey context? Any immediate reflections, thoughts to how to make that even better? Muharrem?
Thanks, Sarbojit. Actually, yeah, government ownership, government buy-in is one of the most important designing element for the country platform, because at the end of the day, this is a country platform, which the country itself needs to, follow and also comment on some of the design elements, and also they put lots of efforts, and sometimes in the Turkey case as well, they put some funding during this initial designing stage. That's why government buy-in is quite important, and especially it gives kind of signaling to the international community, and also to raise international climate finance. Basically, that's a kind of number one of the important design elements. Second one is for sure governance structure with clear roles and responsibilities of the parties. And of course, every party, every stakeholder comes with a different criteria, different priorities, different roles and responsibilities. Since from the beginning of the process, we were quite keen on understanding all these differences and try to align all these stakeholders and harmonize all the efforts under one common umbrella. Let's say TDIP is a kind of umbrella organization. And yeah, I can say that it's quite important to understand the expectations and how we will be answering to those expectations within the framework of the structure.
Thanks, Muharrem. I think very useful and kind of relevant points. And I think in this context, I think in Turkey we have had this kind of early experience where the country also actually put in, as you mentioned, Muharrem, some investments upfront to make this happen, and to realize this. And it was also a bit of an all of government approach. You had Ministry of Industry, you had Ministry of Finance, really kind of coming together under this common banner. Fiona, from your reflection, when we turn to Brazil, I mean, another emerging large emerging economy there as well, policy making often fragmented across different ministries, departments. How has the industry hub in Brazil really kind of come to fructify, and has this kind of coordination support really already started to provide some early wins in the Brazilian case?
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. Just the fact that we were able to support the Mijiki in delivering the national decarbonization, industry decarbonization strategy so quickly was a real win from our side. And I think one key factor that is very important is, when we talk about these country platforms and the role of international coordination and all of that, it's really about, I mean, a lot of this is about the people and the relationships as well between everyone that is working there. And I think that can often be set aside as well in terms, we talk about these abstract concepts, but a lot of this is really people-focused work. And I think there we need to give credit to the teams as well that are working in these things, and the ability of certain people as well to really bring together these conversations, to have the important conversations, and to make the important linkages between ministries, between different actors on those important topics, because ultimately that is what is driving things forward.
Thanks, Fiona. And so in terms of also just kind of getting an idea with regards to investment mobilization and the kind of projects that could come through these kind of pipelines, are you seeing, is there anything that is already available that you can share with us with regards to the kind of projects that are getting channeled through this kind of a industry hub in Brazil?
There is a different sort of prioritization process that we are going through. What I can share is that the process that we're going through is sort of a very integrated process through both the ministries, the Brazil Investment Platform. We are trying to align priorities with the CIF Industry Decarbonization Platform as well. And so the project prioritization is a relatively complex process, I would say, but I think it just speaks to the volume of interesting projects that can really be coming through the platform, and that are looking and seeking for support and have the potential to drive progress in Brazil. I would say that it is technology agnostic, what we are looking at, but we are obviously focusing on the sort of high impact sectors, so hard to abate sectors, primarily in terms of where we will be focusing our support.
Thanks, Fiona, and a big, timely shout out also to the climate investment funds, because, as of last evening, I think, or yesterday, they have now sanctioned 500 million for supporting the industry decarbonization program within Brazil. So I think this will also be a bit of a shot in the arm to extend further the work. And I think in that context, I think moving and turning to you, Cecile, you've been whether it's this toolkit, which I think is a fantastic publication which brings together all these different financial options that countries can explore for mobilizing investments for industry and industry decarbonization. We also have a few questions coming through the chat. So maybe, Cecile, I'll turn to you. If you were to kind of share your thoughts with regards to country platforms being a bit of a center of gravity to help de-risk investments through policy, technical, financial viability assessment. Is there any kind of low-hanging interventions that you think with regards to the projects, the types of projects which should be or could be mobilized through country platforms, which you are seeing also through this kind of toolkit and analysis exercise that you have been doing, that countries could pick up first once they establish such platforms?
Thank you very much, Arboris, for the question. I think it also relates to the kind of prioritization dimension that we've heard, and also from Fiona. The fact that it's really important that to have this prioritization of project aligned with national priority, of course, taking into account also the reality of the country. But I would like to say that when it comes to country platform, it should be also a place to raise the ambition, and so to concentrate the effort also to prioritize this type of first of a kind project, or what we could say very difficult project to take shape with breakthrough technology, but that are absolutely needed to decarbonize hard to abate sectors such as steel and cement. So I'm thinking about hydrogen or carbon capture and storage. So the country platform could precisely be a place where all the stakeholders concentrate their effort on this type of project. That would be really important, and in that context, that would enable to precisely add value to enable such project compared to other projects, as you were referring to, low-hanging fruit. Of course, that's something that is needed also, talking about energy efficiency projects, for instance. But maybe that also really depend on the sequencing I was referring to and the readiness of country, that ultimately what country platform, when they could really make the difference, is really to focus on this how to abate technology and breakthrough technology for the sectors. And that means, of course, a lot of coordination, a different instrument. And this is why, again, the country platform is really the good vehicle to absolutely unlock and scale up investment for this specific type of project. Also, because as I was also referring to, this type of project require, it's not just about the industrial assets themselves, it's also about having the right infrastructure to enable the project and the full value chain. So that means that this really needs a strong coordination and high-level ambition. And so these are key characteristics of the country platform, which means that this, in our view, are the right vehicle and mechanism to support this type of project and to raise ambition.
Indeed, Cecile, I think this is a very good point. I think the more complicated the projects, the larger the scale of projects. I think whether it's carbon capture, like you need the Ministry of Petroleum, you need the Ministry of Industry, you need the Ministry of Finance, and it is also to build a extremely complex projects. Perhaps the efforts, coordinated efforts through a platform could be quite beneficial and helpful. And I think in the case of Turkey as well, we are from the GMP side as well, there are a couple of projects which are being supported. One is on hydrogen and one is on carbon capture. Both seem to be reflecting such needs, so to say. Likewise, I think we have also seen momentum and energy building in countries like Egypt. There's been kind of a lot of effort to kind of connect the dots between the different line ministries as the industry decarbonization projects take shape, because the work on steel requires really a downstream, upstream linkage assessment and analysis. I will turn in this context to you, Felipe. I think from Lead It and also having my own personal kind of Indian experience, I know how complex it is, to even mobilize and coordinate effort. I personally feel extremely kind of positive when I think about Lead It and how it's been able to kind of achieve, bringing together these partners, even though at that time there was no concept of country platform, but you were still doing that implicitly. So from drawing from your experience, like how has political leadership been very important in bringing or making this happen, and then drawing from this bilateral experience, how have you seen through Lead It like really innovative technologies and companies from, say, Sweden being mobilized to engage with those in India? And what can we learn from this experience for other international communities?
Yeah, absolutely. And thank you for the kind words on Lead It, Savajit. I must say that the political leadership has been key to it. I think at a level it signals, at one level it signals to the world that the leaders of these two countries are committed to a partnership. And that already sort of amplifies the message of what it's trying to do. It brings in actors, it supports in that convening. But even at a practical level, operationally on a day-to-day basis, we feel that this is our sort of red button. If ever anything is taking too long to work, or there's been delays in some of the conversations between ministries, we always have this sort of handshake at the highest level to say, we have something that needs to be fulfilled, and that's a mandate that's been given to us at the highest level. Let's convene and try to make something happen faster. So I think one of the key drivers throughout the whole process has been this sort of, we call it the handshake, the Modi-Christensen handshake, but it has been really key. And for us, it's very good to hear that this new or latest development last month on a renewed handshake, if you will, gives us that continued red button that we can always press if ever we're under really tough conditions. On your point about the lessons when it comes to the Sweden, India, and particularly on the company's point of it, I think it's one thing that's emerging and that it would be good to take to other country platforms and other countries. It's just a bit of an understanding of the sort of modalities of cooperation between companies. So I think within the India-Sweden ITP, we're very much focused on a business-to-business collaboration, and that's fine. And we've seen these projects pop up. But of course, you could have other modalities where it's one business or technology provider that is perhaps setting up institutions or labs or whatever in these emerging markets, where multiple companies in the emerging markets are able to benefit from the technology solutions in one place. So there's not just a one size fits all for how business to business collaborations have to happen. And I think we're slowly trying to find that out and trying to take that to other markets that we work in, like South Africa and Ethiopia.
Well noted. I think, South Africa, Ethiopia also seem to be, countries who are prioritizing this, and, looks to be kind of quite forthcoming with regards to, connecting the dots and establishing something which bring all the different parties together within the country. And I think, Felipe, you also touched upon the whole discussion about the industry and the private sector and the businesses themselves. So while we were, scheduling and developing this webinar as well, we were very conscious that, there are two stakeholders, the countries who are not there on the call as, panelists and speakers, and the industry and the business sector who are not there on this call as the stakeholders. But essentially, they are the drivers of the actions and the solution providers, and they are the people who really need to kind of make the stuff happen, while we are providing, collectively as the international ecosystem, providing the, interlinkages, the connections to make much of these things happen, a bit like, a mobile in the engine, if I may say so. So today, I think it's been quite a, a productive discussion from my point of view to at least give a bit of a flavor that we are seeing emerge from the past experiences overall over the years through Lead It, the last 2-3 years experiences that we have seen in Brazil, from Turkey in the last year, and then also past experiences on country platforms. And then I think what from OECD side, Cecile also added the research and the analysis, which is now trying to kind of identify the pitfalls, the positives, the negatives with regards to such country platforms. So I think it's been quite, for me as well, quite an informative exchange. And I hope that, it's also been the same for the colleagues who are joining from the different countries. But to help summarize, I'll turn back to you, Andrea, with regards to your insights, what you felt from the discussions and where we go from here. Yeah, so from my side, thank you.
Thank you very much, Sarbajit, and thank you again to all our speakers and our participants for this discussion. We have covered a lot of ground today, I believe, from the practical experiences with country platforms and coordination mechanisms to the questions around investment, mobilization, pipelines, innovation, international partnerships. There's been a lot of ground covered, and I'm very thankful for everyone that has shared their expertise. I think before I close, I would just like to highlight one important message from the Global Matchmaking Platform. And specifically, if you represent a government, a development institution, industry association, or industry stakeholder in an emerging market or developing economy, and you're interested in exploring country platform approaches for industrial decarbonization, we encourage you to reach out to us. The Global Matchmaking Platform, or GMP, we exist specifically to help connect countries and stakeholders with expertise, with partners that are here on the call as well, with technical assistance, financing opportunities that can support with industrial decarbonization efforts. So whether you're just at the beginning of exploring these approaches or you're already developing a platform and you're looking for support, we very much welcome the opportunity to continue the conversation. So thank you very much. And with that, before I wrap up, we would also like to hear from you, the participants. I will ask my colleagues to help me launch a poll, if that is possible. Thank you. The poll is, we just want to know which topics you would like to see covered in future GMP webinars, and your feedback is very valuable to us to help us shape the next sessions in the series. So yes, please take a moment to share some of your preferences. Let's give it a few seconds to respond. But yeah, as those comes in, maybe just a final thank you from me as well. Yeah, that's all that remains. It's just to thank again all the speakers again for the generous sharing of their time and their expertise. And to thank you all our participants for joining us today. We hope you found this discussion interesting, useful, insightful, and we look forward to continuing the conversation through the GMP. And yeah, thank you very much and have a wonderful rest of the day.
Thank you, colleagues. And we'll answer the questions that many colleagues have asked over email as well.
Yes.